All right, hello guys, welcome to our live coding session. Welcome to Selcode Digital YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be your host and I'm going to show you how to create a React Native app from scratch, including creating a repo in GitHub and a few other bits and pieces, but I'm not going to be talking too much now. I'm going straight into business as we only have an hour to go through quite a few things. So let's focus on that first. So if you want to know a little bit more about me, you can actually see the links to our website or to my profile, so you can follow me on social media or actually find me online to find out a bit more about myself. But otherwise, yeah, let's go straight into GitHub, and this is where we are going to host our code base. This is where we are going to create our first repo. So I'm under my organization in GitHub, where I'm actually going to create a new repo. So you can see that the owner is Selcode Digital, which is the company I work for pretty much, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it React Native Photo App. I'm going to keep it public so you guys can actually preview the files and you can clone or fork the repo yourself. If you have any more questions, do leave a comment or send me an email, and I'm definitely going to reply to you when I find a free moment. So just to remember, don't initialize your repo with a README file or git ignore, or don't add any licenses to it. Only because we are going to initialize Git to our repo locally in our local files in a minute. So this page is actually quite important, as you can see that you can clone your repo, you can initialize Git locally, and this is what we are actually going to do. So my text editor of choice is Visual Studio Code. So if you do use something different, something else like Atom or maybe Livestorm, that's absolutely fine. It's your choice, really, what you want to be using. So let me just quickly go to my projects. So I'm going to name the folder on my local machine the exact same as I did in GitHub. So the names match. Okay, there we go. So now we've got our local folder and we've got our repo created in GitHub, so we have to somehow connect them together, right? Luckily enough, because we didn't initialize our repo with any files, GitHub gives us this quick instructions of what we can actually do. So basically it tells you that you can create a file, README file, readme.md. MD stands for Markdown. So it tells you to create README file with this initial content, and then you have to initialize Git and add that file to your repo, right, to your commit. Instead, if you don't really want to do it like that, we can actually do it in another way. Let me just open this particular folder. Okay, good. So I do have my folder opened, and what you actually can do if you use Visual Studio Code or any other text editor, you can basically just add a file called readme.md, and in there you can say something about your app. And then when you save it, so you can initialize, as soon as you initialize Git, because I'm using ZSH, I'm using ZSH extension to my terminal, so it gives me some extra features. By default, it shows you that there is Git initialized, and I'm on the master branch right now. I checked out the master branch. So basically, we are now ready to start adding our first commits to our repo, and this is what we are going to do. So we've added our file to Git, and this is how you actually create a commit, and you give that commit the explanation. You have to give it a description of what this commit is all about. Keep it short. I think it goes up to 80 characters that you can use. Above that, all other characters above 80 will go to the actual description. What else you could do if you were using Visual Studio is that you could actually have a plugin which enables source controls in your interface, and there is that tab where I can actually see all the changes, and I can add the message in there as well instead of doing it in the terminal. So if you are more kind of a visual person, I do recommend to use this source control plugin together with Visual Studio Code, and you can say, you can just give it a message. You can say initial commit or whatever it is, readme file added, or whatever you feel like you should be putting in there. So you can still do it in a terminal if you feel comfortable with doing it in the terminal. That's absolutely fine, not a problem. And this is what I'm actually going to do in the terminal. So the next step is to push the local files from your local machine to the remote GitHub repository. So that's exactly what we have to do. And then once that origin is created, you can just push everything to your repo. So this is when the connection happens. This is when everything gets pushed to that repo, and that is now deployed. So you can see that a new branch got created, and the branch master is tracked and everything. So if we go back to our repo in GitHub, we can actually see that yes, the branch is there. We've got our initial commit. We've got our readme file, which by default displays on this landing page in GitHub. So whatever you put in that readme file is going to be displayed on this landing page right here, which is quite cool. But okay, next step is going to be to initialize git-flow. So git-flow allows us to add a bit more of a structure to our repo. So basically, when you create releases, when you create features, when you create hotfixes, there is a certain naming convention for it if you follow git-flow. There is also GitHub flow, which is slightly more simplified, but it's yet more advanced for beginners, for new developers. So I would do recommend going for git-flow instead of GitHub flow. So when you run git-flow init, that initializes git-flow in your project, in your repo, and the generator is gonna ask you a few simple questions of what you want to set it to. So basically, what branch names you want to give to certain branches, so it actually understands how to run certain steps when going through git-flow. I'm just going for the defaults because this is very common to use those default values. As you can see, it basically gives you the options of the prefixes to certain branches. So for features, your branch would be prefixed with feature / and then whatever name you give afterwards. But I'm just going to go for the defaults, except for the tag prefix. I do like to prefix my tags with V because this is gonna stand for the version. We're going to follow the incremental versioning strategy, and therefore I'm going to prefix my tag with V. So this is asking you for any extra hooks, etc. So there you go. We now have our default branches set up, so we can actually now push our develop branch to our repo as well. Perfect. So now if we go back to our repo, we should see two different branches. We should have develop and master. Perfect. So basically, develop is your secure branch to begin with. This is where you start your features. This is where you actually start coding, and then once you have a stable version, once you're happy with your code, you get it promoted to master through a release git-flow release process. But let's not actually talk about it now. Let's focus on our React Native app. So basically what we are gonna do, we're going to add React Native to our project. And because React Native by itself doesn't come with a lot of extra features, so there is a framework called Expo, which actually gives you a lot of extra features, gives you a lot of extra options out of the box. It helps you to deal with certain things that you would normally have to do manually yourself, and that means you would have to increment the project time. So by default, React Native is slightly more advanced than Expo. I mean, basically what Expo does, it just gives you that extra sugar around your React Native app. So basically you can focus on your app instead of worrying about certain things. So for instance, you don't have to open Xcode or Android Studio, or you don't have to deal with native modules or anything, because Expo and Expo's features give you this ability to use what they give you. They give you a lot of extra components, a lot of extra elements that you can use straight out of the box and focus on your app instead of doing some things behind the scenes to make your app up and running. So what we are going to do, we are going to use create React Native app boilerplate. Let me just increase the size of this font. There you go. So this is their repo. This is where you can actually get the information from how to install this particular boilerplate. So by default, I think from version 2 onwards, Expo became a part of Create React Native App, or Create React Native App became a part of Expo CLI. So now you can just use Expo init. So if we do Expo init, this should magically create all the files for us which we need for our React Native app development. So basically, it's a quick way to start a new app because you don't have to worry to install separate things yourself. You just get this kind of package out of the box and everything is baked in. So you can initialize Expo and you can start focusing on your app, whilst Expo takes care of other things that you would normally have to do yourself, like image caching, like installing the navigation, the routes, like adding the native touch modules, etc. I think it actually comes with a few native modules itself, so it gives you a lot of different things like permissions, like device location, and etc, etc. Okay, so there we go. So Expo CLI, or the Expo generator, asks you a few basic questions which you have to answer to actually get moving. So I'm going to call it React Native Photo App. And the second question is what kind of template we want to go for when developing, when generating this app. There is a blank option, which basically gives you the minimum dependencies to run an empty project if you actually have an idea of how it should look, and if you have specific designs, if you know that that you have to start it blank, you have to start it from scratch, you have to start it from absolute minimum, then you can go for the blank project. But for this particular purpose, I'm going to use tabs option, which is going to pre-populate, I think, 3 or 4 tabs for me. It's going to create the navigation for us as well, and this is going to be a good way to show you how quickly we can actually get the app running on our machines. So here we go. It's generating the project files. It's actually extracting all the files from the generator, so it knows right now what it has to generate to achieve this particular template. And this is what you can see on the left hand side. You can already see that there are some files added. There you go. So it generated the project within the project. So all I have to do is to move the files outside that folder, because that's not what I want. Excellent. So you can see that it generated a few folders, a few files, basic files, which we need to start start seeing our app. We can run Expo start just to see what happens, if this gives us anything yet, if this is going to be something useful at this stage, or if we still have to do a bit more. Started a bundler, so it basically okay, so there is one more thing. This is the developers tool, where you can see what the bundler is doing. You can scan the code on your device, so you can see this app on your device straight away. This is another crazy cool feature from Expo. So you can scan the code and you can start seeing the project on your actual app. So I think it creates a tunnel on your Wi-Fi, and it basically transmits that app to your device, to your mobile device, where you can start seeing it immediately, which is absolutely crazy. And then you can either run it on iOS or Android. We are going to run it on iOS. You can see that it's attempting to open a simulator, and here we go. So the simulator is running right now, which is great. I mean, this is like 20 minutes into our video, into our live coding, and we are already going to see the app running in the simulator, which is a very, very promising. Okay, so let's open it. There is that particular Expo icon which gets installed on this simulator device, and you can see that it's opening a project. This is the splash screen, which is at the moment blank. It's only because the generator didn't provide any splash images. So it's building JavaScript bundle, which happens to take its time for the first time. So once it builds it for the first time, it caches all the dependencies. And when you run it for the second time, then it takes a bit less time to actually reload the app and display it in the simulator. There are a few extra bits which I'm going to show you in a minute, but it's worth taking a moment here and actually introduce you to React Native Debugger. This is something that you have to install separately. It's a standalone debugger for React Native apps, which is slightly more reliable than just normal DevTools that you can use from Google Chrome or Firefox. So this standalone React Native debugger is really, it's a machine. It gives you an overview of the store. If you have Redux installed, you can actually preview the state. You can preview your actions in here, or you can see the console, or you can enable the network inspect tab as well, and you can see your calls to the API directly in this debugger, which is very handy, because remember that when you run something on a simulator, or if you run it on your actual device, you don't get that access to DevTools to start debugging your app. And this is a very useful, very handy tool to enable you that kind of option. But anyway, let's get back to our app. So it says, welcome to Expo. An iPhone simulator, you can press Command D on Mac to show this menu. And then in this menu, you can see some options. You can see what you can do. So if we do debug remote.js, this actually opened a tab in my second screen, only because Expo runs the packager on this particular port. By default, React Native Debugger looks for this port, but because it's an Expo app, it searches for this one. So I'm going to close the other tab and reload the app, just so it can connect together with the simulator, with the iOS simulator. And once it reloads, then we will see some events coming through this React Native debugger. really takes its time. Not sure why. Normally it's pretty quick. Not sure if this is because I do live streaming or not. Let's see if everything is okay in here. Yes. So it looks like our app is still running. There are no errors whatsoever. But for some reason, it's not running fine. So what I'm gonna do, going to stop the packager, rerun it just to make sure that it's got a fresh start and it's connected to React Native debugger. Okay, so now let's refresh this Metro bundler and see if we are still okay with our bundler. Okay, cool. Let's run it on iOS again. There you go. So there is JavaScript bundling, JavaScript bundle building. Okay. Pretty sure it must be related to my live streaming. The reason why it's taking so long. What I might do is to kill the React Native debugger and run it without it, just so it's a bit quicker. I think this React Native debugger, it actually takes a bit of your connection. So I'm going to stop debugging it for now, just so we can see the app. There we go. So that was much faster this time. So this is the app. This is what Expo comes with by default. You can actually see there is some dummy text. There are those tabs that that we selected when actually starting creating the repo. The project with Expo. So you can see that there is home screen, links, and settings, and there are some default values in there. There is some dummy data. So first thing, let's get back to our source files and see where it all lives. So as you can see, Expo generates those folders. It gives you the structure, how your project should look like. This is what they recommend. I do prefer to change this architecture, only because I think it's not very scalable, and once your root directory starts growing and you start putting more files in there, it becomes a bit of a mess. So what I tend to do is to create SRC, which stands for source folder, and I basically just move everything to that source folders so we can have our source files grouped together, which is absolutely perfect. This is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we need. Then we just have to change a few paths here and there just to make sure that it reflects to our new changes. Okay. Right. Okay, so this is all there we go. This is where we missed it. So the reason why, yeah, there you go. So it all works again. The reason why I wanted to move all of those files to the source folder is only because once, or if you want to start adding more things, more configuration files to your root folder, or if you want to add documentation or anything else, then obviously this root folder becomes a monster, right? So you really want to start structuring your folders up front, and not really later on, you know, in a few months when you actually have all the paths set, and then you would have to edit them in a lot of files. Instead, you just do this up front, and everything is ready from the beginning, which is great. So now I'm very happy with this. I can see my app. I can see that everything works. I can see that, you know, my folder is structured, and everything seems to be exactly as I wanted. There is one thing that I wanted to show you, which is actually great. So there are two ways to open up that menu from Expo. You can either go to hardware in your simulator's menu and do shake gesture. You can use the shortcut on your keyboard, or you can press Command D as well. And then you have some options here. So you can basically enable or disable live reload, or you can enable or disable hot reloading. I'm going to disable live reload because I want to enable hot reloading, and hot reloading is absolutely brilliant feature from Webpack. Actually, it's a plugin that you add to your Webpack, and Webpack reloads that particular snippet, that particular part of the code which you edited. So it doesn't generate the entire bundle again. It just creates a snippet. It gives it a hash, and through the hashes, it hot loads it to your app. Just to show you quickly how it works, we can go to the home screen, and you can see that in the home screen there is some dummy text. For example, this get started by opening blah blah blah. So let's change this get started by opening to something like hello world, and just watch it. Just watch as soon as I save. Just watch this simulator and see what happens on the screen. So I saved the file, and there you go. Do you see that? It didn't even reload the app. It actually hot reloaded that particular part of the app, which is what hot reloading means. This is absolutely sick. Like, this gives you such a great developer experience. It gives you this kind of feeling that you do your changes instantly, whilst normally the native app development would be that you would have to change something, build it, send it to your phone, and then on the phone you would actually see it, which takes ages. It takes forever. Whilst in here you can say hello world in no time. You save it, it's right there. It's brilliant. I mean, this is something that you can't really argue with, you know. But anyway, there are obviously situations when you cannot hot reload your app. So there are situations when you actually have to rerun the entire bundle. You have to do it from scratch because, for instance, when you added a new file, or when you changed some sort of configuration, or you edited your environment variables for something else, then Webpack isn't that clever to pick it up, and you have to rerun the bundle to actually start seeing those changes. So it doesn't work for everything, but for changing the styles, for changing you know, the copy, or adding new components. So if we just copy this component over, it's going to add it straight away. So for this kind of changes, it's great. If you are building a new component, this is absolutely fantastic. And Expo gives you this ability to start seeing it immediately. You can even see it on your actual device, which is even greater. I mean, like you can open this app on your actual device, and you can start seeing the changes when you do hot reloading immediately, and that's great. So that's that what I wanted to show you. Then the next step is going to be to add it to our repo. So we are happy with everything. We are going to add those changes, and we're going to say that we initialized Expo and restructured source files, and then we can actually add it. I've got quite a few Visual Studio plugins which help me to integrate the source control. They help me to lint my files, and there are some other bits and bobs which are quite handy from the plugins. So one of those is that I can actually push everything directly down here in Visual Studio Code. So it shows me that, you know, it was loading for a while and then it got pushed to the repo. So if we get back to GitHub, then we should see our repo initialized with all of these lovely files. So we've got our source files and everything. We can see our commit message, which is great. Then another thing that I would love to show to you guys is the pull request template. So basically you have your repo in GitHub, and from time to time you want to open the pull requests, right? So you want to get your master branch up to speed as well, because right now the master branch doesn't have that latest commit we just did. And you can see GitHub is clever enough to give you that hint to show you that develop is that there was something pushed to develop, right? So develop is actually ahead, and you can compare it with master branch, and you can create a pull request. So by default, it doesn't come with anything. It just leaves you that kind of comment text area where you can put some text, and you can create a pull request for other developers to review, and they can add their comments if there is something wrong or if they have any questions. And then if everybody is happy, they would actually approve it, and then you can merge it back. But what we can actually do here is to improve this process, and we can start creating pull request templates. So once you create a pull request, then you obviously would have this text area fulfilled with something that you normally would write anyway every single time, right? So it's better to create a template and then edit those particular values or sections accordingly to the particular pull request. So let's do it. I mean, let's create this pull request template. So the reason, I mean, the rule of thumb is that you have to have it in master. So we can switch to master. Actually going to stop this packager now. Dismiss that one. Ah, yes, sorry, my bad. Ah. So basically what happened is that master branch doesn't have Expo initialized, right? So basically all the modules, all the dependencies that we installed on develop are not tracked in master yet. And because those files still exist on my local machine, then I see those changes on master, but I basically don't want to see them, right? I want to push those changes first. So we have to reset or discard all the changes. Right, so we want to get rid of these changes, we don't want them, and basically we want to merge develop with master first to make sure that master is up to speed, and then we can work on the pull request. There are loads of files, so Visual Studio Code is struggling to discard all of them, and it's probably going to take a bit of a time to get rid of them all, which is absolutely expected. And it can only show up to 5K files, which is not very handy in this case. This doesn't happen very often. So what I could do, I could git reset hard . But it doesn't seem to be liking it. So I'm probably locked to do it kind of manually. Which shouldn't take too long. I mean, this only shows you how many files Expo adds for you and how much it actually does for you to get you started with React Native app development. And it shows you how huge this framework is, right? I think it's either 4th or 5th round of deleting 5,000 files. So it has like 30K of files out of the box just to cover all of those edge cases to get your development experience onto another level, so you can focus on what's enjoyable and important in development. This is crazy. I mean, it only shows how powerful this framework is, which is great. Okay, this is the last round of undoing the changes. Okay, so let's quickly go back. Right, cool. So now let's actually create a pull request and let's get everything merged to master, because we don't have to run into that situation again. So right now, as you can see, this text area is actually blank. I'm going to put some message, some random message in here, only so we can get it merged quickly. Then I do recommend to squash and merge the commits, so your history looks clean, or clean enough. Okay, so this is gonna be merged to master. Fantastic. We can, oh no, sorry, wasn't meant to do that. So used to working with features that every time I create a pull request and merge, I'll just delete that branch. But anyway, so we can see that we've got all the changes in master branch now, which is cool. Now let's go to our master on our local branch. We can actually pull the latest. Okay. Right. There are no other changes, so we're good. What I am going to do, okay, so what I'm going to do is to create a new folder called docs, and I'm going to add a pull request template.md, and this is where we can actually create our pull request template. And it really depends on what you want to add to the template. There are some templates online which you can find and you can take the inspiration from. So if you Google it, you can see what other people do and how they create their templates. So you can actually take the inspiration from what others do, or if you feel hold on a second, if you feel creative enough yourself, then you can do it yourself. If you know exactly what you're going for, then you know there is no need to follow anybody else. There are multi-purpose templates. There are some generic templates, like this one, for instance. This one is actually very good. So let's get it over to our repo. So you give it a description. You can say what it does roughly. This particular thing, this particular either fix or a change or something else, this particular request. So you can describe why you want this particular commit to be merged back to the main branch, and you can tick the type of a change. You can say how it was tested, etc., etc. I'm not going to change anything in here. This is only for demo purposes. But actually, I'm going to simplify it. Okay, this is good. This is good. Yes, very, very nice. Okay, so now if we check it in, if we say PR template added, I do like to follow the convention that in my comment messages, I do like to say that something was done in the past. It's done. It's completed, and now I'm actually committing the change. Okay, so I pushed it to master, right? I can go back to develop, and I can merge master to develop. Only so we have that pull request in here as well, right? And then we can actually push those changes to develop as well. Squash the commit, just to make it a bit clear. But anyway, so now you can see that we are on master, and whenever we create a pull request, now it gives us that template directly in the text area. So you don't have to copy it over yourself. You don't have to come up with some sections yourself. So this is actually the template that everybody is going to follow in your team, which is great because you can have this kind of consistency when you create new pull requests. And it's great. You can actually check certain things. If you haven't done any of this, then you leave them empty, or you cross them out and explain why you couldn't achieve it. But don't remove them, just keep them there so people can see why it hasn't been done. Blah, blah, blah. So if you create a pull request, I'm actually going to show you what it does, which is actually quite cool. So because it's a markdown syntax, GitHub picks it up and it transforms it to a readable text, which is great. But if we go to pull requests, you can see that that it has 6 boxes ticked out of 12. So that means the template has been completed in 50%, right? It only shows that 6 boxes were ticked. I mean, if you remove the boxes, it's going to show less, pretty much. But it's kind of a nice feature that you can see how many boxes are done in there, which is quite cool. So yeah, this is pretty much us doing the basic setup in GitHub. This is us doing the basic setup for the app. So we've got our template in place. We've got our app configured. We've got our app structured. We can actually preview the app in the simulator, which is great. We've got our branches in place. I can actually show you a bit more about git-flow quite quickly. We still have 7 minutes, so I can quickly take you through. This is probably not the best graph. There is one particular graph which is quite large and nicely explained, so I'm looking for that one. Let's go for cheat sheet. Yes, this is the one. So the git-flow cheat sheet. This is the page that you probably want to bookmark, because you can come back to it if you are not sure what to do next or how to start a new feature. It tells you, it gives you all these commands. It tells you when and how to finish it, how to publish it, how to start a release, how to finish a release, what happens when you finish a release, and how to start a hotfix, etc. So it actually gives you a few different explanations here. You can see that these are our pipelines. This is the history of our commits, and you can see the branches, how they go. So basically, when there is a new branch created, you can see how that reflects to your parallel branches and where you should be starting your branches from, and then how you should be adding a release, how you should be adding a hotfix, how you should be tagging your release and stuff. So this is actually a nice visual, and it's a nice visual way of getting familiar with git-flow, which is very helpful for new developers. Some developers don't know what branching strategies they should follow. This is definitely one of the easiest, one of the most common branching strategies that we've got valuable. Obviously, if there is something that you think you could be doing differently, or if this doesn't suit your needs, if this doesn't suit your project, if you think that you can simplify the process, or you feel comfortable enough with branching strategies yourself, then obviously you don't have to follow it. You can follow, you can come up with something yourself, or you can follow other branching strategies. There is also GitHub, GitHub Flow. That's how it's called. GitHub Flow. So GitHub Flow is slightly different to Git-flow. As I said, it's to me it's simplified. You only have your master branch, and then you branch off that main branch, and you do your features, you do your hotfixes, you do your releases in there, and then you merge back. So this is basically, this is a simplified version, right? It's slightly more dangerous because Git-flow gives you this extra branch. It gives you develop to work on, and then if something goes wrong, you don't merge anything back to master if you're not sure that everything is ready, right? So you first start testing everything on your develop branch. You create your features, you can test your features in your feature branches, then you can test it on develop, and then you create a release when you actually create a package of what you want to get released to master, right? And then you tag it, so you actually have that that version tagged in the history of your commits, because this is what the source control is for. And then you push everything to master, to your main branch, to make sure that everything is tested beforehand. And then in master, this is your production code, right? This is your production ready code. So you want to be 100% sure that nothing breaks before it gets there, right? With GitHub Flow, you don't have that warranty, because, well, you kind of do, but when you merge back, there is no branches before the main one. Everything goes directly to the main branch, and if you don't know what you are doing, you can actually mess up your production code. So I do recommend always Git Flow for the new developers, and GitHub Flow for somebody who already knows what they're doing and they are actually quite comfortable with the branching strategies. Okay, so that's enough for branches. We actually have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to see if there are any messages in the chat. I doubt it, because we don't actually have that many people watching us yet. Next time we're actually going to be coding more React Native stuff, so I'm going to be focusing on React Native. I'm going to add environment variables to our app, and then I'm probably going to add a few components to our app, and I'm going to show you guys how you can host it and how to create a continuous integration to have everything automated. And once you push something into your branch, this automatically will trigger deployment to your hosting. So this is going to happen next. This is going to be our live coding session next week. If you liked this video, if you like this session, please do leave a comment. Please do like the video and subscribe to our channel. If you know anybody from development world who could be interested in this kind of stuff, do share those sessions, those live coding session series and share the links to our channel to your friends. We would absolutely appreciate it. If you have any questions, if you have any recommendations or suggestions, please also do leave a comment. Excuse me. And we are definitely going to reply to every single one, because we want to have that kind of interaction with our audience to make sure that you guys enjoy those sessions with us. This is all from me for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure to give you guys a bit of an introduction to React Native and React Native development. Next time, I promise there is going to be a bit more of the actual coding, and then we will have this continuous integration in place as well. So please do follow us, and thanks again. See you soon. This was Simon. You can follow me on social media. You can actually see my my profiles in the description below. And see you next week. Thank you.